Welcome. The guest link. All right, we'll start with logistics. Good morning. Welcome to the Idea Market long short show where James and I jam on the low-hanging fruit of the information world. We're going to talk about lots of things, including the best information in the world and what it is and how to find it and stuff like that. Please join us in Discord if you want to hop into the conversation in some form or fashion. James, you are currently just looking for the guest link. Is that right?
No, it's cool. Last time, loads of people in my Discord and followers were like, "Can you tell me when you're actually going live?" Because it was really interesting. So I'm just going to send it out to my networks.
All right. So Ideamarket just sent a tweet from that Twitter account, from the Ideamarket Twitter account, showing that it's live. Do you see that?
Yeah. I'm sharing that tweet, so they'll have the access to everything we're on about.
All right, right on. I won't look at it, or the feedback loop will be weird.
Indeed.
Yes. Yeah, man. So I've been thinking about different ways to talk about what Ideamarket deals with and like what I'm interested in this respect. And the phrase low-hanging fruit of the information world keeps coming up. These are absurd times that we live in, right? There's just tons of absurdity. It's kind of like peak absurdity, at least in public view. Like all the skeletons are out of the closet now. It's just big skeleton dancing party right now. So absurdity is opportunity in a certain way, because absurdity means there's something obvious that's not getting done or not getting addressed. So that means there's going to be a lot of low-hanging fruit in respect to information and action that might be a little less obvious when things seem less absurd, when things make more sense. My favorite thing that I always come back to on this is UFOs, because they're very real, have been known to be real for quite some time.
In some form, like whatever they are, it is a real thing. Even if it's just a phenomena though, right? It's like, but that's real.
Yeah, but no, I mean even more real than that. Like, we've known they're physical objects and have every reason to believe that they're piloted by creatures.
Do we?
Human? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you read that article draft, right?
Yeah.
There's way more where that came from. Like, that was,
right.
I
have a book on UFOs you need to read. But actually, I'll just send you the interview I did on UFOs.
Nice. Who'd you talk to about UFOs? Wasn't Bob Dobbs, was it?
No. John Michael Greer. He's got a great book on UFOs. It's a sensible book on UFOs. But he does leave it open. He says like it's more than possible that could be a thing.
Sweet.
The real thing with UFOs we're talking about, I guess, in relation to Ideamarket though, is like the almost the Occam's razor of UFOs, right? What's the Fermi?
Oh, Fermi paradox?
Yeah, Fermi paradox, right? So like the fact we're alive basically would mean that the chances of something else being alive is right. Is that the right one, or have I got a completely different one?
I don't know.
Or is it the other way around?
There's the Drake equation, and the Drake equation just kind of like does. I'm totally going to insult the Drake equation right now, but it's like basically napkin math saying that it's a complete certainty that there's other life out there.
Complete certainty.
Yeah, complete certainty. Like 99.9, like infinity percent.
Infinity percent.
Something absurd like that. Yeah.
All right. So then, what's their reasoning for why we haven't found any?
Oh, we have. It's just not. That's 100%. Yeah.
What do they look like?
Some of them are humanoid, to various degrees. Like the little gray men thing, I don't think is completely fabricated, like the cliches. Some of them I've heard look pretty much completely like humans and can blend in. Yeah, 100%.
All right.
I'll tie this back in at some point. Vinay Gupta, in our first interview, or was it? No, it was some other interview. He was talking about how Western civilization, as we know it today, is basically just the continuation of the Norman conquest. It's like it's Vikings came down from Viking land, took over France and Normandy, and then took over Britain and the UK, and then had this naval empire, and then America started doing like conquering all its stuff and cultural domination of the world and fiat currency domination of the world and stuff like that. And so what we call Western culture is really just, it's a long history of Vikings going, I'm going to kill you and take your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a kind of alien that I have heard about that are known as Nordics because they look like Swedes, basically. They look like tall Swedes. And, that's it. But they're from another planet. They're from another place. They're, I think, much older than us. I don't know a ton about this, so I won't go into a lot of detail. But if you Google Nordic aliens, you'll find like a million things. And yeah, there's way too much information out there to have the impression that it's all made up for no reason, or that the psyop is the making up of information and people just tanking their careers and their reputations in order to tell a lie for no reason. Also, just all the stuff in the article that I haven't released yet.
All right,
etc.
So
it's interesting.
But you're on the point of like absurdity, right? Everything's just so absurd.
Yeah, I mean, that I think is some of the most absurd stuff. That we're pouring billions of dollars into SETI, which is like all these radio dishes that are listening to the dial tone of the universe, going, "Is anybody out there? Hello, hello." Like we're spending billions of dollars on that and not just Googling which aliens are here, please. Which UFOs are here, please. Which CIA directors and military generals and astronauts and presidents have said these UFOs are here, thanks. They're real, they can do stuff. We go to the moon like it's going to McDonald's. It's, not even an issue. Like that to me is one of the biggest absurdities in the information world today. And it kind of goes along with a general theme of Ideamarket, and that the best information in the world is not actually kept secret. Like one of the most frequent arguments is, well, wouldn't a ton of people had to have kept a really big secret for a really long time? No. And the answer is they haven't. They have completely
Well, I mean, this exact same thing, I'll bring in a couple of things actually, but this exact same thing is in the, I know you're not like massively comfortable with this and neither am I anymore, but the esoteric world, right? People are like, oh man, it's a secret esoteric. It's like, no, like seriously, all you have to do is find the books and put in the effort, and you can be, whether or not you believe these things are real, you can be cursing people, you can be doing vampiric shit, you can be doing some real nefarious, dark stuff, and it's there. It's like just there. Just go read the book. But like most things, there's like that buffer of, are you going to make that last final leap where you really have to like enact something or doing some effort? And luckily for us, most people don't, right? But this idea of absurdity, like this, really what we're talking about is like you have data, like pure data, and you're like in a sea of it. Then you have knowledge, like for instance, the data in my room is like just the pure data of reality, right? I could just sense data. And then you have knowledge of like, well, I know that's there, and I can like know it. But to truly understand it is a completely different thing. Like I know if I press the button on my computer, it like I take that data of there's that white box there and there's the little button, that's the data. And I know if I do certain things, then it comes on, the computer goes on. But I don't understand any of that. I don't really understand it at all, and probably never will. Like some people do. Some people will be able to tell me the electrical stuff, blah, blah, blah. But that's one thing. But I would bring in this idea of absurdity, which was really dealt with by Ernest Becker in 2 of his books. He brings in a spectrum of, from one side is schizophrenia, and on the other end is autism. And these aren't really meant in the same way that we'd know them, but they are understood in relation to meaning. And he basically says, like, in this understanding of this spectrum in relation to meaning and how we meaning and social meaning and how we know what we know and how we like form our opinions, schizophrenics in this sense have so much data. Everything means so much. They literally just have an inability to even deal with the world. But on the other hand, autists literally have like one bit of data and a completely confined set of rules, and they only view the world by that sense. But it seems the world that we're building is just inherently schizophrenic, right? Everything is constant, everything is flowing, and everything is like absolutely jam-packed with 1,000 different connections to 1,000 other meanings. So we're just like, you presented with anything, you're like, well, I don't even know what to do with that. And you need a function to get in the middle and be like, right, we need a, you know, like what they'd call a thresher. You bung all this schizophrenic nonsense, like, I don't know what to do with all this crap. You bung it through the thresher, and out of the other side comes, okay, there's like a coherent thing. I can actually do something with reality now, instead of just like sitting back and being like, I'm opting out, there's too much, I'm just going to binge watch Netflix. Like, I can't deal with this. You need that thresher. The problem is the ownership of whatever that function, whoever owns that thresher function. If then they can make that the mainstream thing, then that's, you know, they're in control. Basically, that's where power lies, right? If you can control that, that's the narrative creator. So yeah, that's my like bundle of thoughts on your absurdity thing. Because the absurdity is like the absurd thing is we know so many things which should all complement one another, but they don't. Like, we know we're pretty damn smart now. We have things like Google, and we have this massive data, and we know all these things, and we're like, but why is it then? The absurdity is like, why is it then that things still aren't getting better? Like, things are still just trundling along on like the cycles of history, right? That is our sort of absurd moment in history, is we've treated ourselves as being sort of somewhat better in this progressive sense, but we still haven't really made any leaps. There you go. Little bit of pessimism, a little bit of optimism, a little bit of everything.
Good. I've never heard that distinction between schizophrenia and autism before. I think it's really interesting. Usually when you see distinctions in psychological imbalances, there's like one that's imbalanced up and one that's imbalanced down. Like when you have neurotic versus character disorder, neurotic people are all like in their head and imbalanced up. They're falling around, they're imbalanced. And then character disordered people are too stuck in themselves and too willing to blame others for their problems. There's like an upper and a lower direction of psychological imbalance. But in both autism and schizophrenia, it seems like those are both upper things. It's like two different forks of a like focus problem.
Well, they're all, yeah, but they're two different forks, but like they're addressing meaning and I guess epistemology, but both of them fail because one side, the only way one side, like the autist, can really attend to any meaning is constrain themselves, to give themselves enough limitations and anchors that it will make sense. But then the schizophrenic's like, well, no, to give myself these anchors would sort of falsify my judgments. But by doing that, then you just leave everything completely open and you're sort of back to square one. You're like, this means this means this, like I don't know what to do with it, right? And you're just in a world of like paradox and contradiction. But like we live in a world of contradiction. That's the problem. You know, like Deleuze and Guattari, they say like nothing dies of contradictions, or nothing ever died of contradictions, which I think is great because it's like that's our world, right? It's just constant contradictions, and yet nothing like fails because of them.
Yeah. I don't know that I don't think I agree completely. I think some things can be contradictory and not die, but I think everything else dies of contradictions.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Tons of shit. Contradiction is probably the leading cause of death in terms of things and trends and concepts and governance structures and all kinds of stuff. But there are some things that can withstand it like forever, in that sort of translogical tautology kind of a way. But I wanted to say something actually. I wanted to ask something. So schizophrenia comes in different kinds, and if I understand correctly, one of the responses to schizophrenia is catatonia, being totally like unable to act or move or respond, just sort of like unresponsiveness to life. And it sounds like you're saying this sort of schizophrenic environment, our response culturally tends to be, forget this, I'm not going to deal with this, I'm just going to watch Netflix. Do you see a parallel there? Is it kind of a catatonic response? Is it kind of like, this is too much, I'm checking out, instead of hallucinating things? And
but I mean, I guess you could say it is a catatonic response. But I mean, the more nefarious thing is that catatonic response is being artificially developed, right? Instead of like, I guess the usual catatonic response is just like an organic opting out, right? You just go into like a catatonic depression of anhedonia. You literally just lay in bed all day, like you're literally sensually opt out. I'm done. Like I can't even deal with the world. Whereas like the catatonia that's been developed, it's like, no, go be catatonic. Here's some ways you can do that. Like, you know, the pushing of binge watching things is, I mean, that's like basically making catatonia like, or being catatonic a virtue, right?
Yeah.
It's scary stuff.
Interesting. Yeah. Speaking of making binge watching a virtue. Oh man, I'm gonna sound like such a grandmother right now. But a recent trend. I don't know if it's. See if you can tell me how long this has been going on, because the answer might be since like the Middle Ages or something. But it seems like there's a trend now where the influences that sort of create moral degradation are not necessarily so much themselves immoral, but giving permission to the immoral. Someone used to describe, for example, Donald Trump not as like particularly doing anything bad, but making it okay to like making it socially acceptable to unleash your badness in certain ways. And I keep seeing that sort of release valve approach to evil come up. Like, you know, it's okay to XYZ destructive thing. It's okay to binge watch. It's okay to whatever. And if it's not said that way, that directly, it's implied or endorsed by people with status or has hashtags about it. Like there's kind of,
well, I mean, historically speaking, this goes back to the Garden of Eden. The snake didn't make Eve.
You're right. That is the original temptation. All right.
Snake didn't make them eat it. He said, like, well, you could, like, you know, give it a go.
Be all right.
But that, I mean, that's a fairly good analogy to give, though, because the point of that is that whether or not you take it as like the devil, or whether or not you take it as, I don't know, like vices, they don't actually have any power over you. It's all about you going like, oh yeah, that's not too bad. Right. So like you could say, well, a lot of these companies that, just to bring it back to the modern day, a lot of these companies are trying to avoid, you know, responsibility and accountability for their actions, of saying like, yeah, why don't you just binge watch? And then they'll say, well, it's your choice if you did it. But I think that's such a skewed version of ethics, because ultimately that effect couldn't be there without their cause, right? And you could get into all kind of debates about whether or not that system of epistemological cause and effect is true or not. But it's like, I don't know, just to revert to some form of common sense philosophy, I would say like, no, it's sort of like the advert. It's a really tough one, because on one hand, you don't want to give up people's agency. So you don't want to say like, right, I drank a can of Coke and it's literally the fault of the advert because eventually I got like fat, right? But on the other hand, there is that decision, which we've spoken about before, of, well, who said that you could put this advert on the highway, which I now suddenly want, even though I never did, and I never consented to actually look at this in a free space of like the state, right? It's sort of like saying, all right, I've got £5 million and I've paid for a plane to fly over every day, and it says like, I don't know, eat, I don't know, something like super unhealthy. But to what, you know what I mean? But to like, where does the ethics lie of like, well, hang on, this is, that's everyone's space. It's like these people who are on about putting an advert on a moon, which we've spoken about before, and we've spoken about
it. I'm
it.
so surprised it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I know, but we've spoken. If this is hyperstition, man, it will happen.
Yeah.
We need to. If we don't want this to happen, we need to stop.
All
we need
to
develop a fiction of why it would fail.
All right, let's do that. Let's do that right now.
Well, if it's on the moon, so it can only be at nighttime.
I don't know.
Oh no!
Here's why it would fail.
Okay.
Because
moon's not real.
if the powers that be ever want to use like holographic projection to fool people, if someone does an ad on the moon, the people they hope to fool will know that they have that technology now to like do big astronomically sized illusions, basically. Like if you put a Coke logo on the moon, then you could put like a Russian, bomber over a city or something. You know what I'm saying?
Just as an aside there, can you imagine like the marketing meetings in Coca-Cola like 10 years down the line when like the guy who had that idea and made it come to fruition, he's like, so what have you guys come up with? Oh, you wanted billboards? Yeah, that's pretty good. But it's not as good as that time I got an advert on the moon. Our sales went up quite a bit. I mean, you guys, anything close to that, you sort of can't top it, right? Maybe that would actually damage them. It would damage them more because that's going to be your ultimate peak of advertising.
Yeah, it's celestial shark jumping.
But actually, I mean, just as an aside on this, to show, we love talking about fragility on this show, to show how fragile Coca-Cola are. I love this idea that Ronaldinho, the footballer, big famous footballer. Anyway, I don't know if you heard. So in the press conference, Coca-Cola had either paid or they just tactically placed a can of Diet Coke and a can of normal Coke like on the podium. So they're in sight of the camera. Like they'd be like here on the camera, and then he's up here with the mic. And at this, just all he did was grab them, move them out of the shot of the camera, and put a water bottle there instead. And they lost like 200 million from that. What? Yeah. I'll have to find it because it was.
How did they calculate that? Did they pay 200 million to do that, and then he took it away, or were they expecting to make 200 million from the sales from that? Like, what?
Hang on. So, I'm trying to figure out how much they lost. So it was Ronaldinho. He lost $500,000 contract because he was meant to be like the ambassador of Coke, and he didn't want kids drinking it. But then they lost loads of sales because obviously people look up to him. But I mean that doesn't even affect him, and he said he hates Coke after that. I'll have to find more on this story, but it was really like about that fragility of like, these companies do seem to be on like an almost like trailblazer of constant keeping up with entropy, and as soon as like the smallest thing, like, so there's the thing of maybe why not so much why the advert on the moon wouldn't work, but why it's super dangerous. Once you've got, it's like getting a Michelin star. All these chefs want a Michelin star for their restaurant, but if you listen to any interviews, they love it and hate it. Because they're like, yeah, I've got a Michelin star. But you know what that means? I have to either keep that Michelin star now forever or go up. Because if I lose it, then no one's ever going to want to come to my restaurant again, right? And it's like if Coca-Cola's advert on the moon failed or it was gone, you'd be like, oh, they can't be doing too well now. They can't afford an advert on the moon. So you know what I mean? It's tough. It's a tough decision. This is why I haven't done an advert on the moon, because I just think, wow.
That's why. Yeah. I mean, that's a good reason, I think. You got to think about the long-term effects. It makes perfect sense. Speaking of fragility, it's interesting that you mentioned Coca-Cola, because companies like Coca-Cola feel ubiquitous. They feel like forces of nature. They're just right. You're born into a world with Coca-Cola on the billboards and on the commercials, and you die in a world with Coca-Cola on the billboards and on the commercials, and it's a part of nature. It's like clouds. It's just always constantly there and permanent and untouchable, right?
Yeah.
And I had this surreal moment.
Same with McDonald's.
Yeah, at all those giant corporations. I had this strange moment at the Miami Bitcoin conference in early June a few months ago. And my friend was interviewing Sam Bankman-Fried, the CEO of FTX exchange. And he's just, he's a guy, and he's super social. He just walks around. He's a billionaire, like 28 years old. He doesn't have any bodyguards. He's just like, oh yeah, hey. And he just, does stuff. And, I think this is, super cool. And also it made me go like, so one of the things that happened at the in Miami, I don't know if it was at the conference, but in Miami, we drove by, like, I don't know if it was the Miami Heat Stadium or something like that. And it had been renamed to FTX Stadium. That, like, he bought the naming rights to a stadium, a sports stadium, right? And now I'm watching that Major League Baseball playoffs, and every umpire has a little FTX badge right here. And there's like projected ads behind the batter that say FTX crypto, you in? Like FTX is coming to this Coca-Cola level presence. And I have seen behind the scenes and know that all those logos just come from a guy. It's just a dude who's just like, hey, like, it kind of takes the archetypal mystery out of it when you remember and like have a visceral sense that all these giant things just come from a guy. Ultimately, it's just some dude who's like, yeah, like you wouldn't be able to tell him from anyone else.
But do after a certain time, though, do they? Maybe with that first founder, they do, like when Ray Kroc was around, when McDonald's. But I always feel like after that first founder dies, it becomes this like organically developing mess when no one wants to be accountable. I don't know. I always feel that these things, because as we've said before, like these people, even though you could say, all right, it comes from one guy, that guy, whoever he is, for FTX, for Coca-Cola, if there is like a head of these things, they can't just be like, I've made a decision, we're shutting down today. Like they can't do that. So that's sort of like, if you haven't got the power to do that, then you don't really call the full shots. You might have like executive power within majority of the branches, but if you can't just be like, yeah, can't be bothered with, like, Coke's done. Why? I've made enough.
Well, it's too late for Coke because they're publicly traded and their stockholders probably wouldn't like that. And if they tried to shut down, then some other corporation would swoop in. That would be the point then.
That would be the point then. Once it gets to that level, fragility becomes a different thing because it then enters into this sort of what do you call it, like a managerial. We have the managerial state, we have the oligarchic state where basically it's money and power, which money and status and power all sort of coalesce, and you can't really find who has the power. And it seems maybe once it gets to that level of like stakeholders, it's like the business is no one's anymore. It's like, it's honestly like an entity. Well, it's quite literally, it's a public entity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That question of who has the power, I really like, because when I think about, this is like a super, super hard left turn. Are we done with this topic? Are we good?
Yeah, sure.
All right. When I think about who has the power, I have a mental image of like the roof of the Pantheon in Greece. Pantheon, has the big dome with the hole at the top, right? Hole at the top in the center. And that's how the sphere of worldly power feels to me. You have all the famous people who are powerful, like the Clintons and presidents of this and that, and CEOs and things like that, Elon Musk and Bill Gates and all that stuff. You have the famous, powerful people. But then the things they do don't really make sense sometimes. And they're not publicly doing UFO things, but UFOs totally exist. We probably have them. I mean, humanity has definitely, reverse engineered or built UFOs and stuff, and it's just very slowly leaking the technology and the knowledge out to the public. So I think of the Pantheon because it's like when you look at worldly power, you go up to this level of fame and then you go, all right, that's not the end of this rabbit hole, but it's just pure chaos and unknown, after that. It's just a black hole. Like you hit the event horizon of power. And then where the fuck does it go? Does it go to aliens? Does it go to Satan? Like where does it go? Both? All three? Anyway, I'm interested in that question. because it seems so weird. One of those absurd things.
Yeah, but I mean, what else is power connected to in that sense? That's sort of like the money thing of like a certain point of money is like, well, it's like power. I don't know, like power stops being a problem. Like money stops being a problem after a certain threshold. Like for instance, like Jeff Bezos, once you can probably buy a country, like
yeah, it becomes another thing. Like it becomes, it takes on another quality. Like I saw an excellent Reddit post by some guy who had been like an executive assistant to a ton of high net worth individuals, and he kind of broke down stratum by stratum what each amount of money means for your lifestyle. If you have $1 million, you can do this. If you have $100 million, you can do this. If you have $1 billion, you can do this. And it just changes. It changes what the playing field looks like. You become able to like mess with things that others can't and shape things that others can't. I mean, this is kind of obvious, but it kind of makes it tangible. But yeah, like you hear about things like various presidents requesting access to UFO information and being denied it. Like, who denies the president access to things? Yeah, like this is super well documented. Freaking Carter.
Well, I mean,
and
I guess
Clinton
I guess
Obama,
back to the like the money thing. I guess it's less what you can do with your money. At certain points, each threshold is I can now do more, but that means like I can't do less. So you see what I mean? Like when you're poor, it's like there's a ton. The horizon is like it's like there's mostly things I can't do when I'm poor. Like that is most of what life is things I can't do, and then that slowly opens up. I mean, if you're of that mindset, and eventually it's going to get to the point where, on a certain level within like the scope of a normal person, like an everyday Joe, you can be like, yeah, I've got the money. I can literally do. I can do it. You know what I mean? I could like, let's say someone's got 20 mil. That's like everyday richness, because you could be like, you could, do that whole hotel, like 30 grand a night thing. And it probably wouldn't, it's not really going to matter. Right. So at that point you could say, I can do anything, but then it's like, you can do anything, but only within a certain sphere of, there's probably people with less money who can do more in life because of their power. You see what I mean? So it seems that, you know what I mean? So if someone's got like 100 million, but they're not really with the right people, they can do the everyday stuff. But there's probably someone out there who's really not that well off, but like because of the way their life has been led and the power and the connections they've got and the stuff they know, their horizon is far more open. I don't know. I see it that way. Like you can have all the money. Like you're saying, you can have all the money in the world. You can be Jeff Bezos, but there's someone somewhere who's like, nope, you're not coming in. Like you're not coming in, and that that's good power. But so with that UFO thing, like no, you're not seeing it. Like we don't need the money. Like you don't have anything that we need. Would be the main thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Which then reverts that that whole thing to like value. So like, what is the value they're actually after, and what does it take to like get into places when the value that's needed isn't money, and then the value is, I guess, knowledge.
Could be, but even knowledge by itself doesn't seem to be that useful, because tons of nerds
have seen aliens.
Have seen aliens, right? And or lots of people have been abducted, people of various levels of education, and knowledge that UFOs and aliens are real seems to only go so far, and it's not that far. I have heard about, you've seen maybe the patents, like UFO looking patents in Google patents from the official patent office, and they're assigned to the Secretary of the Navy and stuff like that. Like that kind of knowledge seems, potentially powerful, or maybe it could be specified as ability, because anyone can read a patent, but to be able to come up with it or write it or build the thing, maybe that kind of knowledge would be valuable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm interested. That's a really interesting question. Like, what are the stores of value and the exchange of value
after money
at the levels above money? Yeah.
Same with power. Like, if you've got all the power in the world, like, what can you offer? What can you offer these people beyond money and power?
Right.
That's a tough question. Utility?
Yeah.
Like, it has to be at that point, at that level, it has to be completely unique.
Yeah, I mean, all the options are starting to get kind of creepy. Like, you have the pedophilia ring stuff that might come into the equation. You have like loosh stuff that might come into the equation. If you don't know what loosh is, Google it. And yeah, I don't know. I'm also like, what is so exciting about having power? Why is that something that some people just can't get enough of? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, that's like the philosophy question of the day, right? We've been going on about, in Continentals, we've been going on about power for like forever. And I mean, the problem is as well, I think people always think power, they make it synonymous with domination. And it's like, well, I don't think it always is. I mean, there's certain powers which aren't there to dominate people. They're just to control the circumstances, something to help them be more orderly, right? But I think for a lot of people, the power we're talking about is the fact that they want to be able to know that they can just, anywhere they go and anything they do, they are just in complete control.
So it sounds kind of like a peace thing. Like, when people are after power, it sounds like they're after peace of mind in a certain way. Like
stability, stability, security. But then the irony is, at a certain level, oh my God, this is literally a midwit meme.
Oh, good.
This is literally a midwit meme. Because at a certain level of like Diogenes in a barrel, and at another level literally of Alexander of Macedonia, they're actually on the same level of security. Because he absolutely doesn't give a shit about any of it, to the degree that it just doesn't matter. And he's got so much of it that it doesn't matter. But it's everyone in the middle. So I'm telling people, either quit your jobs and become homeless or become a billionaire. We all know what's easier.
Yeah, man, just walk right out that door. Yeah, nothing's stopping you.
But I mean, that's the thing. Like, and the irony is, those two people, the ones at the rich end, don't have power over. They only have power over those in the middle who are like grasping over what they have. They don't have power over, like, you know what I mean? When everyone's, all these like rich Democrats are trying to like change the minds of like yeah, dude, I'm fine with living in a van off like $100 a month. Like, and there's nothing like the Thoreaus of this world, and they just will never like get that. Like, if you don't want power and but ironically they're on the same level because they've achieved security basically via their mental appropriation of their circumstances. Wow.
Conquer oneself, and you conquer the world. That's the thing that comes up a lot. Yeah, man, Diogenes maximalism is the way of the future, I think.
Yeah, I was reading a good book recently by Dolly Freed called Possum Living. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
She considers herself like a Diogean, like just after Diogenes, and she basically, in 1978, she was living off in a house, $500 a year, which equates to about 2,700 today a year, including everything. So and like, she wrote a book called Possum Living, which is about how to live that lifestyle. It's really good.
That's interesting. That's like what, like $8 a day?
Hang on.
365 days a year, $10 a day would be 3,000. So it's less than $10 a day.
Yeah, it's about $8 a day. So about, for me, about £5 a day. So 150 pounds, like 200. What's that? $200 a month? Yeah, $200 a month.
That's a one Netflix subscription a day. How can you?
When you put it like that, though, it doesn't seem as absurd. I mean, if take aside bills and things, and the mortgage.
that sounds really quite low. Like, she probably didn't have electricity. Just in a house with like candles and windows. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that. I think that's great.
I think they just lived in a really like sort of. There was a normal house. It was just way out in the sticks, and not in a desirable area.
Okay, or maybe she generated her own electricity with a bicycle or something.
I just sat in the dark. Yeah, we're not spending any money. Sat in a pitch black room, eating cold beans.
I mean, if you can do that, you can retire like immediately.
Well, I love Lund Fisker's mathematics behind retirement, right? It's like if you can live off 1/10th of your year, if you can live a year on 1/10th of your yearly wages, then you can then live another 9 more years on it. So like if you then lived, let's say you're 20 and you want to retire at 80, you'd only have to work 7 years if you were able to live off 1/10th of your yearly wage for a year.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. That math makes sense. It makes it probably gets a little more difficult with wives and kids and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. Why just get rid of them.
That makes sense. Yeah. Just they're
first step of the book.
To go. Yeah. Diogenes. I've always liked Diogenes, and I've always tried to find the Diogenes of Twitter.
Man. Well, like in terms of Twitter itself, in terms of tweeting.
Yeah, like who
I would
on
have
Twitter
said
is Diogenes?
What's his name? Drill. Wint, whatever his name is.
What are you talking about?
You don't know Wint?
I don't think I do.
Oh,
not from
you need
that.
to get on that. You need to get on that.
I am. I already have a tab up on hand.
Is it Wint?
Oh, this looks dumb.
No, hang on. Sorry, it's not Wint. It's Drill. He's not. I don't know if he's even on there anymore. I don't think he.
I see Wint. I see Wint Drill.
Do you? What's his?
I do. Name? Yeah, it's DRIL.
Is that it?
I mean, appears to be.
Oh yeah, he's still
18 hours ago.
Yeah, cool.
I've never seen this dude before. What is diagenetic about him?
Yeah, dude, I don't know. Just follow him for a while and follow. I can't explain. I can't explain Drill. Follow him for a while and you'll get it. But it's pure it's like someone who's been given that platform in real life and has gained a huge audience, but seriously has no mental buffers of what they're saying. Not to the point of like offensiveness or anything like that. Like the kind of untapped stuff you just say, like walking through a supermarket. Like I've never come across an account which is less, like held back. I don't know, man. I really can't explain it. But it's the same with the Diogenes thing. Just one of those guys you see, like Jeff Lebowski, right? Like the dude. You're like, man, that guy just does not care. Like, but he really doesn't care. He's not pretending not to care. He really doesn't care.
Yeah,
and that's rare.
Well, I think it's worth the caveat that the goal isn't not to care kind of in a global sense, but to wisely allocate the fucks that you give. It's not no fucks given, it's wisely invested fucks. And compared to the norm, that looks like no fucks given.
Yeah.
Norm, yeah.
I just don't care about the thing that you care about a lot. And that annoys people.
Yeah, it does.
Like, especially when it's not like, it's not that it's just not your thing. I don't know, like housing, it's not my thing. I just don't care about it. But it's like, I just don't care. I don't care about that. Or like fancy cars, when people are like, keeping cars till they explode. And you're like, well, it still drives. It's like, yeah, but don't you, they get annoyed. Don't you need a new one though? No. And I don't care. Same with like when your shoes are falling apart and like your clothes are falling apart and people like, mention it. I love those moments though. But there is a fine line because eventually, you're walking around in like shabby clothes with like food in your beard, and
the ROI starts to not be there.
Well, it depends. It depends if you care about it depends where you care. I've always got on with those people the most, though. You know.
All right, that explains a lot. Remind me to show you my shoes with holes in them collection later. Actually, I don't have them anymore, but I feel you. Favorite shoes?
Nope, how many pairs of shoes do you have?
Have present day currently, like present tense? 3 and a broken one, 4 and a broken one that I haven't fixed yet that I really like. Yeah, not too many.
Cool. Yeah, I'm about the same. Yeah, trainers.
No, actually, I've one pair of like athletic shoes, and the rest are like half boot. Here, I'll show you. No, I'll show you. Oh, these are cool. I've been wearing like some version of like a half boot for years and years and years.
I used to wear things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I have like 3 variations on that, and then one pair of athletic shoes and one super lightweight thing that I can like wear to the beach and stuff like that. Okay. But I am boring myself by sharing my shoes.
Yeah. I was gonna say we need to move swiftly on.
Indeed. Talked about that. Have you had any more thoughts about what kind of information we can put on listing pages and stuff like that, especially for the Wikipedia market? Like, so if the Wikipedia market, here's the thing about it. A lot of people have legitimate gripes that Wikipedia is super manipulated and messed with by special interests. Like, of course, obviously, but you don't have to agree with the information on the Wikipedia page in order to find value in elevating the concept represented in the title.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, if I was interested in, let's say, the one that's almost biggest on the Reddit Wikipedia, Operation Northwoods, I'd probably scan that article and then I'd be like, man, this is crazy. And then I'd go and read some other stuff elsewhere. Well, I always saw Wikipedia as like all right, like I just need to know what this thing is first, and like have like a bare bones, this happened overview. And usually, to be fair, I know Wikipedia can be biased, definitely, but it's pretty good at, they've done this, like the facts of the situation. And they do eschew those facts, but by the time you're done with the article, you know about the thing. And that's the point we're trying to make, because I don't think we're trying to bolster Wikipedia. We're just trying to say, like, Wikipedia is used as a function to basically outline ideas, because otherwise you've got to find some way to be like, right, well, how do we define, let's say, because you could buy the Wikipedia page for being or ontology, and it's like, that's one hell of a job for us to go
Game over, mate. Yeah.
It's one hell of a job for us to go through the entirety of everything that Wikipedia has and log it, right? Maybe we could avoid that bias by using simple.wikipedia. But I don't know if everything would have. I don't know if everything would have been.
No, definitely not.
Simple Operation Northwoods.
Right. Some bad people did some weird things, and here it is.
I'd back that.
But yeah, what we could do is I like that. The CIA operation book for kids.
Yeah.
The ABC's guide to covert ops.
MK Fisher Price, MK Ultra.
Yeah, there we go. I like it. How to brainwash your classmates while no one's looking. Yeah, so like the simple version of Wikipedia pages could be something potentially that we show on the listing page, so that when you open it up, you have all this other context.
Because I mean that's what I was going to say, is that on the listing page, almost like a 2-3 sentence overview, because ultimately linguists will probably disagree with me. Almost impossible to insert a bias within a 1 to 3 sentence description of something.
I would disagree with you.
It's possible, but we
can do this right now. Just tell me a thing to describe.
How long's an average sentence? 20 words?
An average sentence, according to assholes, is 20 words.
20 words. All right. You got
There's
20
a bias.
words.
I am anti 20-word sentences.
What conspiracy are you like, do we both know of? Or what event which Wikipedia eschews do we both know of? UFOs. UFOs. UFO phenomenon. You got 20 words to describe the UFO phenomenon. And I know nothing about it.
Yeah. All right. The UFO phenomenon includes reports of encounters with aircraft unexplainable by any known natural or artificial things. That, well, I'm failing this assignment.
You got 3 more. You almost did it, but see, you couldn't get a bias in there.
Yeah, but I was trying not to, because my instinct, I don't know.
I just think I
forgot what the assignment was.
I'm gonna be pragmatic. I think on an average, on the average listing, I don't think there's gonna be able to get a bias in within like.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I wonder if like the first 1 or 2 sentences are therefore kind of the least biased in a Wikipedia. I've never thought about this because
I think
trying to eradicate bias is barking up the wrong tree. It's always going to be there, and lack of bias isn't persuasive anyway, and it's not particularly useful.
To be fair, okay, the UFO one on Wikipedia, yeah, it's pretty good.
Like all you have to do is put the word apocryphal into it.
The first like that first little paragraph, 2-sentence paragraph, yeah, about 2 or 3 sentences on Wikipedia is fine, and then literally the second one is saying like the UFO studies failed in the 70s, but the first one's fine. So I think for most things, because ultimately Wikipedia can't start with this thing is wrong, but here's what it is. Like it has to start with this is what it is, right? Let me think of another.
But it's a bit disingenuous to say UFOs are any unidentified flying object. Like that's one of the first arguments that you get. By this point, everyone knows what you mean when you say UFO. You mean freaking alien spaceship or non-conventional anti-grav, human spaceship. Everyone knows that's what you mean. So by like defining it in that way, there is kind of a bias against those things being real, because that's the important part. The important part is we have tons of evidence that superhuman technology exists in abundance. And that's not the first line of Wikipedia. It's, well, technically, this means unidentified flying object, which could be a loud insect in a dark room.
Yeah,
is that a fly or a horsefly? I don't know. It's an unidentified flying object. That's disingenuous.
No, I don't. No, I'm gonna just stay on the pragmatic line and say that there's enough cultural conditioning to allow us to attend to it. And a fly is an interesting point.
Sure,
fly is a creature.
Yeah, but if you don't know what it is, a creature is a subset of objects. I mean, just look at this thing.
So what's on the what's on the listing page so far for you? Definitely on it.
It depends on what we can do. I really like the engram idea. We're still in the
we should develop our own. We need to have a 2-hour meeting where we develop this chart of the conspiracy chart, because we could develop our own metric of like memetics.
That's all I'm saying. That's all. If all we talk about for the next month is
how do we develop it? Yeah,
done. Sweet.
I want to see it.
Let's do it. All right.
How much time you got now? How much time you got now?
I roughly forever.
Forever. Cool.
Yeah, this is really cool. Roughly forever. I have to play some guitar. I have technically an hour.
Right. I need like a whiteboard, really.
you can do a Miro thing, or I have an iPad, or I have Post-it notes.
Oh, let me get a mirror. I think I need to sign up, but I should be able to sign up pretty quick.
Yeah. All right, quick intermission. I'm gonna play with some graphics while you. Yeah. Well, maybe I won't. That's annoying.
I just want to like skip. All right, there we go. Skip. What do I want to do? Research and design, mapping and diagramming. That one.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Let me.
Mimetic metrics.
Oh man, this is. I've never used it before. Like, this is just what's. I don't know. I'm just gonna use a blank template. Oh my. All right. All right. Can you see that?
What am I looking at?
Is it there?
Oh yeah, hang on. I'm bringing it in. Look at that. There it is.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What did I do? There.
There we go.
Right. Sweet. So I don't know how to use this. Is I've already set it up wrong because you're meant to use like this hasn't gone well, Mike. I think you should have.
I should have done it.
Yeah. Because I clicked.
Why? I think it's working.
It's working, but because I did it with a trackpad, and it's now just not letting me do anything.
All right, we will figure out the technical difficulties before next time.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah, nothing's working there. I'm gonna stop that screen share. Can you do it? Have you got some cool? Have you got some cool software?
I like to draw things on an iPad.
All right.
But let's come back to this. Let's figure out the medium.
Yeah,
we can jam on this. And technically it's been an hour, so
okay.
We will end the official live broadcast and then hang out in the Discord.
I think I will say I think we should do the conspiracy chart programming live, but with like Garrett and Sam, and we'll all. It'll be hell. Good. It'll be chaos, but it needs to be.
I think that just about sums it up. Cool. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. We will see you on Discord and/or next week. Peace.